Here's today's edition of Severe Weather Outlook. Still very active for the next several days, mostly across the northern plains. As you can see, here's the forecast for today, Friday, what remains of it. So this is a late afternoon, evening, and even overnight hour event. You notice that the level 2 is divided into two. And really, what separates these two areas is tornado risk, really. So in this area, not so much expected. This is all north of a front with higher bases to them. So hail is primarily the risk with that, although severe wind is also at a 15%. Both of the yellow areas, by the way, have 15% wind and hail. And I decided not to replicate those, just tell you that that's the case. So the differentiating factor is that this area here has a better chance for thunderstorms to be routed closer to the surface and has a better rotational parameters for the lower part of the atmosphere. So that's why the tornado risk was initially yesterday over here and then extended far off into Illinois now. Everything along I-80 basically and south into a small sliver of northern Missouri. And that's a 2% risk of any strength tornado within 25 miles of a point. And that's the SPC's forecast. A little bit of an up of an ante here on NATOcast. They do put a 5% risk in there, just about squarely south of Des Moines. And the rest of that pretty much follows with what the SPC says, except they do put a little bit of a tornado risk with that northern level 2 area. Not mentioned by the SPC, but that would include the Chicagoland area and Milwaukee and Madison and up to around La Crosse, even maybe getting up close to Eau Claire. There is a hail risk worth mentioning here. The NATOcast does have a hail risk forecast that goes with this, and they have a 15% chance and even a 30% chance of large hail from Omaha over to Des Moines, with that black outlined area, a 10% chance of a 2-inch hailstone or larger. The severe criteria is 1 inch. So that's pretty sizable. I wanted to show you also CSU's outlook here, the tornado outlook. Pretty much, I mean, if you kind of connect the dots, it kind of agrees with what's been put out there by the SPC and other forecast parameters. And these 15% risk areas are pretty likewise, except the 15% risk for the SPC is actually up here in Wisconsin, a little bit more along with the wind. So then we'll turn the page to Saturday, and this is interesting because we have severe weather possible basically in 3 locations for 3 separate reasons. This is a frontal system moving through the northeast, and this has been pretty consistent. I'll show you a zoom in of that level 2 in a minute. Also a level 2 here in northeast Montana and northwest North Dakota, and a marginal risk from Oklahoma City southward. There's a very weak low pressure system with weak level winds, but it has all the characteristics of being more important. It just doesn't have a real strong wind flow. That's the thing with that. Whereas this one does, and this is a front, so that kind of separates out the chances. But this has been pretty much a threat for here for tornadoes for quite a number of days now. But a level 2 out of 5 severe weather chance for any hazard for Columbus, Cleveland, of course, Pittsburgh, Youngstown, Harrisburg, Scranton, all those areas, all the way up to Albany and through a significant part of Massachusetts and Connecticut, New York City's in this as well. Now, the tornado risk is early on in the event, so it's sandwiched back to the west a little bit more. So it just kind of cuts off there in Pennsylvania, but includes some of those other towns like Pittsburgh and Youngstown that I mentioned earlier. Now, if we look at the NATOcast for tomorrow, here's what's interesting about NATOcast. It actually puts a 3% tornado risk there along the Oklahoma-Arkansas border and down there just south of the Red River, Oklahoma-Texas border area. So that was that marginal risk that was put here by the SPC. So that's an interesting outcome, I think, for Saturday. Canada, storm chasers going up there, has a 5% risk of a tornado. And then right around PA, Pittsburgh, PA, about it goes from a 2 to a 3% risk. And they also talk about a little bit stuff in New England as well. So if we look at Saturday's forecast from CSU, they are not really mentioning much of widespread tornado activity. They do kind of put a blip where NATOcast did, and they do put a blip where the other tornado forecasts are, but not nearly as excited about it, really, as the other forecasts are. And then on Sunday, a little sliver there around Richmond, Virginia of marginal risk, the tail end of that front, but a level 1 to 2 up through the Dakotas, parts of Montana and Wyoming, North Dakota receiving the brunt of that. There is a tornado risk. I think that does go with that here, maybe as high as 5%. according to CSU, up in parts of North Dakota. And interestingly, again, on Sunday, look at this little tornado risk showing up right over my town, Springfield, Mo, and through parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and maybe a sliver of Kansas. The hail threat's pretty large in North Dakota. This area up here is going to get repeated severe weather over the next several days, by the way. And this is still connected, this and this, with that weak little system that's trying to move through. Well, it is moving through, but it's just very weak. And it's be interesting to see if that can tap into some stronger mid-level winds to support supercells. And the instability should be there, so that's going to be interesting. In fact, if we look at Sunday's storm net, it does put a measurable tornado risk right in western Missouri, central Missouri, down into northwest Arkansas. So I find that to be interesting as well. That's Sunday. Then on Monday, I wanted to show you that, and I had been talking about this a couple of days ago for folks in the Ozarks. We have a 15% risk of any severe weather on Monday square over us, really. Northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, central Missouri, eastern Kansas. That's Monday's forecast. SPC does not mention anything so far about that. They may, and if they were to do it, it would be, they would say a 15% risk in the area. Actually, that would be day 3 if they wait till tomorrow. So that would show up in their more detailed forecast. So we'll see what happens on Monday. I did want to show you the tornado risk for Monday here. If you kind of connect the dots, you can kind of see what's going on here. But there's a little bit of a tornado risk along I-70 there in Kansas, all the way up to southern Nebraska and in northern Illinois. That would be the first opportunity I would have to chase. I thought I will not be able to do it on Sunday, but Monday and Wednesday seem like days I may target. And it may just be as easy as just going right here. We'll see. Been out there a lot so far chasing. Then we go to Tuesday. The severe weather probabilities from the SPC are pretty much confined to North Dakota. If I show you that in comparison to CSU, pretty good match, except they extend the 15% risk a little bit more down into Nebraska. Then on Wednesday, Minnesota, eastern Dakotas, again, 15% risk of severe weather. Compare that with CSU, so there's their forecast. There's the CSU model. Again, just extending those probabilities more to the south pretty much, and maybe a little more to the west. I did want to show you Wednesday, still on Wednesday, the tornado risk is pretty high, in the 30% range, a little higher in central Minnesota on Wednesday. So would that be worth the drive for me? Could be. But also goes down to Nebraska, so that would be a little closer for me. So we'll see what I'm in a mood to do. Also, here are the composite supercell forecast. This is for the 5th through the 11th, basically the next 7 days. Pretty high supercell probabilities all up and down the plains and as far east as Wisconsin, as far north as Canada. And then the week after that, June 12th through the 18th, still pretty high risk from parts of western Kansas and Nebraska up into Minnesota. It's climatologically where you see a lot of severe weather and kind of repeats the pattern I just showed you. Remember, all the SPC outlooks were all up here. Looks like the same the week after that. And even the week after that, the 19th through the 25th, not much change. Again, the Dakotas, they're used to seeing severe weather this time of year. I do think that I'm watching the jet stream flow, and it looks like by this point, these may be more in the derecho mode. We're making more straight line wind kind of convective elements happening by the time we get to that point in June. But that's still kind of far out, so we'll see how those details pan out.